What happened in this past series that the Mets just played in was unacceptable, and I really think we have to start thinking about waving the white flag on the season in general because the Pittsburgh Pirates just completely embarrassed the Mets. The aggregate score was 30 for the Pittsburgh Pirates, 4 for the Mets. We'll actually get into later in this video how that's so significant, but this Mets team really has just been pitiful recently. Ever since June 13th, when they blew a 5-1 lead against the Rays and lost 7-5, they have just been an embarrassing team. They first go on a 7-game losing streak, then they do better, but still pretty poor. Actually, this game I clicked away from the hottest game in Citi Field history. Mets had a 3-0 lead. It quickly evaporated, and they lost 7-4. Meanwhile, yes, they won the next 2 games of that, but they had no momentum. And honestly, it's getting even worse now. At least early in June, the Mets could beat up the bad teams. Now they literally can't even do something as basic as beating up the bad teams. They're getting beat up by the bad teams. Are the Mets a bad team? I think that they are. I think that this is really exposing their true colors. Yes, obviously, there are pitchers who are on the injured list. And obviously, it doesn't really help matters when you have pitchers on the injured list. Nonetheless, there are some things that we're going to talk about in this video that make it so, even though there may be people on the IL, why this is still unacceptable. First of all, look at who is on the IL. Obviously, Kodai Senga, the Mets ace who was pulling an ERA on a 2 is on the IL. Sean Manaea is on the IL, and who knows, he might be out for the season. And he was really the Mets ace last year in Kodai Senga's absence. But Tyler McGill is on the IL. And I don't know if you know this, but Tyler McGill, he's not very good. He had a 5-5 record and a 3.95 ERA. He was great in April and March. Finished April on a 1.74 ERA that actually before that game was down to 1.09. He was really looking like a Cy Young ace. He was responsible for the Mets' first win of the season, and he was cooking early in the season. But you have to remember that Tyler McGill is not a very good pitcher. He had a 5.96 ERA during May, a 5.52 ERA during June, so his ERA finished over 4, and it kept ticking up. His last game against the Rays, it was pitiful. 3 2/3 inning pitched, 3 earned runs, 6 runs scored, and I don't know if you know this. My thought is that if you are a pitcher and you commit an error, it should count towards your ERA. I know ERA is supposed to be only about pitching, but if you make an error by the pitcher, like you're responsible for that run, it should count for your ERA totals. Plus, the fielding itself by pitchers is relatively basic compared to other positions. So if you can't do that, you should not be a pitcher at the major league level. And I'm trying to find which hitter was the one to have this error occur to them. Walls hit a sacrifice bunt, but McGill had a fielding error, so they couldn't even get the out. And then 3 unearned runs score because he gets an out, but then allows 3 runs and has to be pulled. And then he's on the injured list. So, obviously, he's on the IL. Griffin Canning, who I gotta say has actually been pretty good, but not a superstar, is on the IL. And and Griffin Canning was a 3.77 ERA. He had a 7-3 record. Probably would have been an easy 8-3 if he didn't get injured in the game on June 26th when he tore his ACL. That's why he only lasted 2 2/3 innings. But Griffin Canning is someone who has actually looked relatively reliable at points this season, and he's just someone who the Mets lost. But he's not Kodai Senga. He's not Sean Manaea. Like he's good for depth, but when the depth pieces get injured. But I'm still gonna blame Stones for a lot of this. First of all, Frankie Montas was struggling in AAA, and his ERA was just like through the roof. And load. And I get that he's on the you can't say he's doing a rehab start forever. But looks like this game didn't update yet. But yeah, his ERA swelled. What a surprise. But my God, hurry the fuck up. Oh my goodness. Just pitifully slow. Okay. And I get that you can't just like shut out you can't just like keep him in shut him down forever. Like at some point he has to go up to the majors. But like you could have DFA'd him. You should have DFA'd him. And I get that the game on Tuesday was not his fault as it gave you 5 scoreless. This game was absolutely on him. In 4 innings pitched, he allowed 6 earned runs, and then he had to go to some of the low leverage arms to complete the game, which stunk. What a surprise. And it's just pitiful. I mean, this may be statistically the worst the Mets have ever looked in a series ever. And it was, they're saying this is a historically bad 3-game series. And, it was just, they're saying this might be rock bottom. They had a players-only meeting last night, and it didn't do anything. Like, this team is feeble. It was outscored 30-4, which may be the worst in MLB history. I've heard that. The offense didn't do anything. The pitching didn't do anything. I get that for the pitchers, a lot of them are on the injured list, but for the hitters, Chavez and Barnes, like, they're healthy. Chavez and Barnes have to be fired. But what do the Mets do now? Well, why is this computer being so weird? Hang on. So as you can see with the NL wildcard standings, first of all, the Mets are now only up a game on the wild card from the Cardinals. And not only that, but they've fallen from the first wild card to the second wild card. They're now in line for the 5 seed because of the Brewers, who the Mets take on this weekend. Now, Now, to be fair, you do have the Pods, who are a game back, and Giants, who are a game and a half back. But um, oh, you can't see this. I have to at some point make it so you can go across all tabs on Screencastify. I'll do that sometime. But looking at this, the Padres actually lost today. That helps the Mets. Giants, they also lost today. So Mets didn't lose too much ground. But they lose a game and a half behind the Philadelphia Phillies, which is never a good thing. So again, you really just look at this and you see how far the Mets are falling. Like, they very well might be under 500. The Mets are going to finish June with a losing record of 12-15. After they started the month off 9-2, and just look at all this red. That's a loss that the Mets have sustained during this just pitiful stretch. And not only that, but the Mets finished April with a 21-10 record. And since then, they've gone exactly 500. They've gone exactly 27 wins, 27 losses since to reach where they are now. That means zero growth from April. If you thought May was bad, welcome to the June misery. And furthermore, you got to realize that they were 18-7 on April 23rd of 25 games. And yet, through the next 60 games, 30-30 to get back to 500. It's just been pitiful. And some of the more reliable pitchers, like they're faltering too. David Peterford, he was a pitcher who now has a 4.55 ERA in June, was doing pretty well at the start of the year. Built up a 5-2 record. Now it's 5-4. This game against the Braves was not his fault. Well, actually, it kind of was, but that was more so Mendoza keeping him in too long, not anyone warming up behind him, and then Reed Garrett and Huascar Brazoban blowing the game. And we'll talk about Brazoban in a second, too. But Peterson, has gone 8 2/3 in his last two starts. He gave up 10 earned runs. So his ERA was 2.6 before. It was actually 2.49 before that game in Atlanta, when he had that complete game shutout, and he is just so bad since. Paul Blackburn, another guy who he's another guy the Mets had. He did pitch 5 scoreless against the Dodgers. Granted, he didn't earn the win, even though the Mets wound up winning because Kranick and Diaz blew the game, but then the Mets recovered in extra innings thanks to Alvarez and Lindor. He earned a save against the Rockies as he pitched 4 innings to win the game 13-5 on Sunday the 8th. But since then, this pitiful outing to blow the game against the Rays, and his ERA since then has ticked up to 7.71. I know there was a rain delay, and he'll just blame that like a feeble loser, but it wasn't the rain. Well, it was a bad decision by Mendoza to keep him in, but, it's just he's a crappy pitcher. And you look at 2024, and you sort of see the same thing in Blackburn when he was on the Mets. You see a pitcher who initially was good. He won the game against the Angels, pitched in his innings, only allowed 1 run, and he's a guy who has looked decent in his first few games against the Mets, but then quickly reveals himself to be a complete and total fraud. And then he got injured. His ERA with the Mets was 5.18 last year, and he went 1-2 in that time. And he might have been David Stearns' worst pickup, as he is just cancer to the Mets. Cancer. That's what Paul Blackburn is. And Speaking of which, we'll talk about Brazoban quickly. Another one of Stearns' terrible acquisitions. And we'll talk about why keeping him was even a mistake. He's a guy whose ERA is 13.5 in the month of June. He was pulling a 1.34 ERA after May. He looked reliable. Now his ERA is 3.83. It is just embarrassing how bad he is. And in this game, didn't allow an earned run, but he still allowed a walk-off sac fly to the Atlanta Braves. He's someone who had one save of the year in his third pitching appearance against the Miami Marlins. He earned the save. He looked pretty good as he only allowed 3 earned runs in the month of April, but granted 2 of them were on home runs. This was a wind-aided home run on April 8th. It was a crazy game. The Mets actually had to move the game up because of the temperatures were going to drop to the 30s that night. It was very windy as the final Arctic front of the year was moving through New York. And he then earns this win but blows a save as he allows a home run against the Cardinals. He had 10 holds on the year, but you look at the saves. This game he blew the save because of fielding errors. He still earned the win. Earned the win against the Red Sox. He pitched 2 1/3 scoreless innings, but then allowed the Dodgers to score 2 runs, one of which earned on May 23rd to lose that game in 13 innings. Blew the save with a home run to the Dodgers on June 3rd. Blew the save on June 6th to the Rockies. I get that the Mets came back and won anyway, but he still blew the save. Earned the walk-off here. 1 out, 3 earned runs against the Braves on the 24th. Contributes to their loss, even though the loss actually fell on... who did it fall on again? Oh, right. Castillo, who was pretty pitiful. But I mean, you have to look at this. The lineup isn't producing for the Mets. The pitching has regressed and there's a lot of injuries, but the lineup still is not producing. A lot of the Mets games have been very low scoring. Very low scoring for the Mets. They just look pitiful on their road. In their last 9 road games, the Mets have won 1 of them. And in the Mets' last 7 home games, they've won 2 of them. They can't win on the road. They can't even win at home now, which is their strength at the start of the year. It's just embarrassing as to how poor the Mets are as a team. If the ownership was better, then maybe I could see there being an argument that maybe, for the Mets, maybe they'll turn things around at the deadline. But I highly doubt it. I genuinely, highly doubt it. Looking at Brazoban, he was a guy who looked pretty good on the Marlins, or at least decent on the Marlins, but his ERA, once he got on the Mets, he pitched 21 innings, and in that time, he allowed 12 earned runs. So that's an ERA of 5.14 on the Mets, which isn't good. His second game pitching for the Mets, he, in 2 1/3 innings, allows 3 earned runs on a homer to blow the save and lose the game for the Mets. He proceeds to then blow the save on August 18th against the Miami Marlins to contribute to that loss. Contributes, but is not the main reason why the Mets blew the game against the Athletics on August 15th. Struggled against the Padres. Didn't do great against the Blue Jays either. I get that he earned 3 holds on the Mets, 1 against the A's, 1 against the White Sox, 1 against the Red Sox, but he still wasn't very good on the Mets. He still wasn't very good on the Mets. So, and there's a reason why he was not on a postseason roster. I don't get why the Mets kept him, but he is certainly hurting the team a lot more than he's helping the team, even though he had his moments this year of helping the team. I don't know what the Mets do here. I just don't. This is a very dark time for the Mets. I think Stearns is too immature to actually fix the roster. He seems to be care more about his own personal pride and ego than actually helping the team. I think Steve Cohen is a closet Yankees fan, and maybe I discussed that before. I think Steve Cohen is a Yankees fan who is pretending to be a Mets fan when he's owning the team. Mets need some changes quick, and I don't think they're going to get them before it's too late. I don't know what the Mets are going to do at the deadline, but I don't think they're going to get any frontline starting pitching, which is what they really need.